go over the wall and we land in a Little League baseball game. And every kid's mother was there, of course.
When Smokey and the Bandit roared into theaters in 1977, it looked on the surface like nothing more than a breezy, high-octane romp packed with southern humor, tire-squealing stunts, and a little outlaw mischief. But behind its quick pace and easy charm lies a string of behind-the-scenes stories as colorful and improbable as anything that made to the screen, starting with the lightning-fast way it was conceived. How Needham, a legendary stuntman, making his debut as a director, came up with the idea not in a Hollywood conference room, but while crashing at Burt Reynolds' guest house, where he noticed a cache of Coors beer, illegal to sell east of the Mississippi at the time, had among visitors, and he realized a simple gag of smuggling beer across state lines could fuel an entire movie. He quickly hammered out a treatment in just a few days, pitched it directly to Reynolds, and once the star agreed, his name alone enough to open studio doors, Needham and co-writer Robert L. Levy expanded it into a working script in under a week, though script might be generous and to function more like a loose roadmap, with half the dialogue ultimately improvised, much of it literally dreamed up inside moving cars, lending the film the loose, spur-of-the-moment energy that made it feel more like the crew were having fun than making art, which in turn gave it a uniquely genuine tone. And that off-the-cuff spirit extended to Jackie Gleason's unforgettable turn as sheriff, Buford T. Justice, a role he essentially wrote himself since most of his lines, among them such quotable gems as, "What we got here is complete lack of respect for the law," were made up on the spot, his insults, timing, and mannerisms drawn from his own comedic instincts, and inspired partly by a real Florida Highway Patrol officer he once encountered, with Needham smartly giving him room to roam, and minimal direction, resulting in an unpredictable, hilarious performance so infectious that even the crew often had to fight back laughter, especially during moments like the famous one-take Diablo sandwich and Dr. Pepper scene, which Gleason created out of thin air. Meanwhile, Burt Reynolds himself hadn't initially been sold on the concept. Already a huge star from Deliverance and The Longest Yard, he found the idea of a beer-smuggling road movie underwhelming. Yet Needham, his longtime friend and stunt double, persisted, convincing him with a promise of fun rather than prestige, and Reynolds, doing it partly as a favor, wound up in one of his most defining roles, delivering a charismatic, relaxed performance buoyed by his real-life romance with co-star Sally Field, their chemistry adding authenticity to their banner. While he enjoyed the experience so much he later called it the most fun he'd ever had making a movie, though he admitted turning down a sequel idea was among his career's bigger missteps. And speaking of icons, the black and gold 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Bandit drove wasn't merely a flashy prop, but a pop culture phenomenon in its own right. Actually a 76 body with 77 front-end styling, because Pontiac couldn't deliver the latest model in time. And after the film's release, Trans Am sales surged over 30%, with dealers unable to meet demand, posters of the car plastered on kids' walls, and grown men lining up to channel the Bandit swagger. Even though the actual movie cars had no performance mods beyond their aggressive look, most were wrecked during filming, and only one survived in drivable condition, later restored and auctioned for a small fortune, while Needham himself received one as a gift from Pontiac, and Reynolds' love is enough to buy one outright. Casting Sally Field as runaway bride Carrie, however, was a battle, best known then for perky sitcom roles like Gidget and The Flying Nun. She wasn't seen by studio execs as leading lady material, but Reynolds fought hard, insisting she had the smarts, humor, and spark to match him line for line. And once cast, she more than proved him right, bringing warmth and wit to a film that could have been pure slapstick fluff, improvising freely during car scenes and benefiting from an expanded role that let her run alongside the chaos rather than just be rescued from it, helping shift perceptions of her in Hollywood and paving the way for her future Oscar wins. Needham's own approach to filming the many chase scenes was pure daredevil, often guerrilla style without permits, road closures, or formal clearance, especially on highways and back roads, relying on spotters, walkie-talkies, and his own stunt instincts to choreograph dangerous moves, with Reynolds performing some of the driving, but seasoned stunt pros handling the riskiest stunts, including the famous Trans Am leap over a collapsed bridge that destroyed the car on landing but delivered one of the movie's most thrilling shots, all while narrowly avoiding major accidents and occasionally charming real police officers who wandered into the chaos. The role of Cletus Snowman Snow, Bandit's truck driving partner, was another case of serendipity. Country singer Jerry Reed was initially only hired to write the theme song, which became the instantly catchy Eastbound and Down written in a single night. But when casting fell through, Needham looked at Reed and decided he was perfect for the role. His easygoing vibe, authentic CB radio slang, and ability to ad-lib, making Snowman an indispensable part of the film. while his idea to add Fred the Basset Hound gave the story one of its most endearing sidekicks. And the song not only became a hit on the Billboard charts, but also a fixture at concerts, car shows, and even political rallies, cementing Reed's crossover fame, despite Paramount's low expectations, figuring its Southern fried humor wouldn't play nationally. The $4.30 million budgeted Smokey and the Bandit became a word-of-mouth juggernaut, grossing over $126 million domestically to rank second only to Star Wars of the year, filling drive-ins, inspiring repeat viewings, and spawning a wave of car chase comedies through the early 80s, even as critics like Roger Ebert dismissed it with middling reviews, proving that charisma, horsepower, and a dash of mischief could sell tickets without spaceships or special effects. The CB radio craze was one of the film's most unexpected legacies. Already popular among truckers, CB culture went mainstream after the movie, with its slang, 10-4, breaker, breaker, put the pedal to the metal. Entering everyday language, CB sets becoming a must-have gift. The FCC issuing new guidelines for hobbyists, and manufacturers offering factory-installed CB units, while restaurants and shops embraced trucker-themed promotions, and Smokey became common shorthand for police. In the editing room, the raw footage, often shot with little regard for a shooting script, was shaped by Walter Hammond, who had worked on Alfred Hitchcock's Family Plot, bringing a master's touch to the pacing and blending of comedy and action, restructuring sequences for rhythm, and using sharp transitions to keep the energy up, a style later emulated by many comedies, with Reynolds crediting him for saving the movie by making it feel faster and tighter than it was, and Needham happily deferring to his judgment with the line, "He knew what to cut, I just knew what to blow up." And as a final flourish to the film's legacy, after filming Wrapped, Reynolds gave Needham one of the Trans Ams in production as a token of friendship and gratitude for the wild ride they had shared. A car Needham kept for years before it vanished into mystery, resurfacing in 2016 to be authenticated, restored, and sold for over $500,000, with Reynolds himself present to sign the dashboard and reminisce, the scratches from its filming days still faintly visible. A fitting artifact from a production that began as a beer smuggling joke and turned into a cultural touchstone, blending unplanned magic, real stunts, quick wit, and the bonds of friendship into a joyride that audiences have been happy to take again and again for nearly half a century. One of the greatest beneficiaries of that freedom was Jackie Gleason, cast as the indelible Sheriff Buford T. Justice, a character who in lesser hands might have been broad caricature, but who Gleason turned into an unstoppable, quotable force of nature. Gleason, already a comedy legend from The Honeymooners, was given minimal direction and full license to craft Buford's insults, pacing, and physicality however he liked. Drawing partly from a real Florida Highway Patrol officer he'd met, he invented the sheriff's voice, bombast, and rhythm right there on set, tossing out lines like, "What we got here is a complete lack of respect for the law," without a scrap of paper in front of him. Needham trusted him enough not to rein him in, and that trust paid off in moments like the one-take Diablo sandwich and Dr. Pepper scene, which Gleason improvised start to finish while the crew tried, and often failed, not to ruin the take with laughter. That unpredictability made Gleason magnetic, slightly dangerous in the best way, and ensured that Buford felt like more than just a comic foil. He became a cultural archetype. Reynolds, for his part, hadn't been eager at first. At the time, he was one of the biggest stars in the world thanks to Deliverance and The Longest Yard, and the idea of headlining what sounded like a beer-smuggling farce didn't initially appeal. He even turned it down, but Needham kept nudging, stressing the fun rather than the prestige. Eventually, Reynolds relented, largely as a favor, and found himself in a role that would forever be tied to his persona. He would later say it was the most purely enjoyable filming experience of his life, partly because of the looseness on set, partly because of his chemistry with Sally Field, who played the runaway bride Carrie and who happened to be his real-life girlfriend at the time. Their banter, unforced and playful, added a genuine romantic spark to the action, something no casting director could manufacture. Reynolds enjoyed working alongside Gleason as much as audiences enjoyed watching them, giving the veteran comedian all the room he needed to land his verbal haymakers. Although Reynolds would come to regret turning down a certain sequel concept, Smokey and the Bandit kept him the #1 box office draw for 5 consecutive years, cementing his crown as Hollywood's top leading man of the era. The third co-star, though it never said a word, was a black and gold 1977 Pontiac Trans Am, a car that went from modestly selling model to cultural sensation overnight. The vehicles in the movie were actually 1976 bodies with a redesigned 77 front end, a necessity because Pontiac couldn't deliver the latest cars in time. Still, the aggressive screaming chicken, hood decal, T-tops, and muscle car stance made the Bandit's ride instantly iconic. After the film's release, Pontiac Trans Am sales spiked by more than 30%, and dealers couldn't keep them on the lot. Posters of the car adorned bedroom walls, and middle-aged men lined up to capture even a fraction of the Bandit's mystique. In reality, the movie cars weren't hot rod at all. They were stock machines whose attitude came from styling and the way Needham's stunt team handled them on screen. Several were sacrificed in production, battered and broken during chases, with only one surviving in drivable condition, later restored and auctioned to a private collector for a hefty sum. Pontiac gifted Needham a Trans Am after the film's success, and Reynolds loved the car so much he bought one for himself, reinforcing the idea that the vehicle wasn't just transportation for the Bandit. It was a rolling piece of his identity. Casting Sally Field as Carrie was not a foregone conclusion. Known then for sunny TV roles like Gidget and The Flying Nun, she wasn't the studio's first choice for a romantic lead in a high-octane action comedy. Executives wanted someone they considered more conventionally glamorous, but Reynolds went to bat for her, insisting she had the wit, intelligence, and presence to go toe-to-toe with him. Field later said she was grateful for that vote of confidence, as it not only gave her a juicy role, but also shifted the way Hollywood saw her, paving the way for her Oscar-winning dramatic turns in the years to come. Once aboard, she made the most of her freedom, improvising moments, especially in the cramped, kinetic car scenes, that added charm and humor. Needham expanded the runaway bride subplot after her casting, giving her more to do than just sit in the passenger seat. That choice gave the movie an added layer of warmth and helped balance the testosterone-charged action with human connection. The stunts themselves reflected Needham's maverick style. Having spent years risking his life for other directors, he knew how to plan and execute high-risk car work, but he also had little patience for red tape. Many of the film's most exciting chases were filmed guerrilla style. No permits, no road closures, just a skeleton crew, a spotter or two, and a willingness to pack up and leave before local law enforcement caught on. Rural roads and stretches of highway were commandeered for just long enough to get the shot, the drivers communicating via CB radio and walkie-talkie to time passes and drifts. While Reynolds handled some of the tamer driving, professional stunt drivers tackled the big leaps and high-speed slides, including the memorable jump over a collapsed bridge that destroyed the car on landing, but earned a permanent place in action movie history. Accidents were surprisingly minimal considering the renegade approach, and Needham's background meant he could choreograph mayhem while keeping the risks manageable. Jerry Reed's involvement as Cletus Snowman Snow was another stroke of luck. Initially hired only to write the film's theme song, he turned in Eastbound and Down almost overnight, a rousing, twangy anthem that perfectly captured the movie's momentum. When casting fell apart for the role of Bandit's truck-driving sidekick, Needham simply looked at Reed and decided he was the man for the job. Reed had acting experience, but had never been in such a prominent comedic role. His easygoing delivery, real-life familiarity with CB culture, and knack for ad-libbing made Snowman unforgettable, and a suggestion to add Fred the Basset Hound gave the movie one of its most beloved mascots. Reed even drove his own truck in certain shots and handled minor stunts, lending authenticity to the long-haul lifestyle the film celebrated. Eastbound and Down would go on to become a hit on the country charts and a permanent fixture in Reed's concerts, ensuring he could never perform without someone in the crowd shouting for the Bandit's theme. When Smokey and the Bandit finally premiered, Paramount didn't expect much. With a $4.3 million budget and minimal marketing, it seemed like the kind of regional comedy that might play well in the South but fizzle elsewhere. Instead, word of mouth turned it into a national phenomenon. The film grossed over $126 million in the U.S., second only to Star Wars in 1977, packing drive-in theaters and drawing repeat customers eager to memorize its lines and relive the chase scenes. Critics like Roger Ebert might have shrugged, but audiences didn't care. The movie hit a cultural nerve, ushering in a wave of similar car chase comedies through the late 70s and early 80s. One of the most surprising aftershocks was the CB radio craze. Truckers had long used Citizens Band to chat and swap road intel, but after the movie, CB slang, 10-4, breaker, put the pedal to the metal, entered everyday speech. Sales of CB set skyrocketed. Kids asked for them at Christmas, and even family sedans began sporting antenna whips. The FCC had to issue new guidelines to manage interference as more casual users crowded the airwaves. Restaurants, shops, and advertisers leaned into trucker themes, and Smokey became nationwide shorthand for police. For a while, The Bandit wasn't just a movie, it was a lifestyle people could play out from behind the wheel of their own cars. Editing all this into a coherent, snappy package fell to Walter Hammond, a man with an unlikely resume for a redneck chase comedy. He had edited Alfred Hitchcock's family plot, With Needham's free-form shooting style producing hours of footage without a rigid blueprint, Hammond essentially assembled the movie's final rhythm in the cutting room, tightening action beats, shaping comedic timing, and using brisk transitions to keep the story rolling. Reynolds later credited him with making the film feel faster and more polished than it really was, and Needham gladly deferred to his instincts, quipping, "He knew what to cut. I just knew what to blow up." The production story even has a coda worthy of the Bandit himself. When filming wrapped, Reynolds gifted Needham one of the screen-used Trans Ams as a memento of their shared adventure. Needham kept it for years, taking it to shows occasionally, until it vanished from public view. After his death in 2013, it resurfaced authenticated and sold at auction in 2016 for over $500,000. Reynolds attended, signed a dashboard, and swapped stories about the shoot, noting the faint scratches still visible from filming. That car, like the movie itself, had survived against the odds, carried with the spirit of a project that began as a beer running gag and became an enduring American joyride. Equal parts charisma, horsepower, camaraderie, and law-dodging mischief.